Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sean Sweeney. I am the Director of Operations at the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We are at the end of our Excel Award process for 2024. Excel, of course, standing for Excellence in Chief Executive Leadership Award. Every year, we have made these videos after the process to highlight some best practices that we've learned from that year's finalists. This year, of course, was no different. We have amazing finalists and who have all taught us, us being the selection committee, many different things throughout the months long process that they're involved in it. And we're excited to make these videos to really share those best practices with our network and with the greater nonprofit sector in the DC area. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually introduce Ian Schuman, who's a partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors, who is the award's sponsor. Ian, over to you.
Okay, hi, I'm Ian Schuman, partner in outsourced accounting at GRF CPAs and Advisors. This is the Life Happens edition where I call in from my car where I'm having appropriately breakfast with my 91-year-old mother-in-law today instead of sitting in my nice office. So GRF is an independent CPA firm. We do audit, tax, client accounting, which is where I am, and risk advisory services. Longtime members of the center, longtime part of the DC nonprofit community. So the award celebrates excellence in nonprofit leadership. And as part of that, we understand how hard it is for nonprofit leaders to do what they do and all of the different skills that they need to do it. So we have this video series where we get to hear directly from the winners. So I'm excited to hear from Dawn Quattlebaum at the Seabury Resources for Aging.
Great. Thanks so much, Ian. And I will mention too, before he jumps off, that Ian is a member of our selection committee. So I want to say thank you so much to him and our other members of the committee. Really, we couldn't do this award process without them. So thank you, committee members. And thank you, of course, to GRF as well. Great. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's jump in. We're going over to Dawn. This video is one of three that we'll be producing after this award process. And this one will be really on kind of umbrella nonprofit finances. So nonprofit finances, while maybe not the most exciting of topics, are of course of the utmost importance. A strong financial operation is absolutely necessary for a successful and sustainable organization. Policies and procedures should be adopted by a board of directors and then implemented by staff. And of course, the chief executive, as kind of the middleman, is responsible in bridging that gap between governance and operations to ensure the continued success of the organization. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of ways in which Dawn's role specifically has led to some amazing growth at Seabury in this video, like I said, on finance administration and growing investments. So Dawn, thank you so much for joining us. And just to kick us off, can you kind of tell us just very high level how Seabury is structured financially? It'd be great if you could highlight some, revenue, income, some funding sources, and maybe your biggest budget items between your different sites and programs.
Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you to the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. We've been members for a long time as well, and I really appreciate not only this award, but this opportunity today. So I have to start by saying that I must give major credit to our Board of Governors and especially our Finance Committee for sharing their collective years of expertise in the financial and investment fields. They have provided excellent guidance to the executive and finance staff for many years. So Seabury is structured financially by several major revenue sources. One, which is very important, we have an endowment and we have trust that provide guaranteed quarterly income and really provide stability for our organization. We also have district government grants, mostly from the Department of Aging and Community Living, and they are our largest source of reimbursable income to fund two of our ward lead agencies in wards 5 and 6, our Model City Senior Wellness Center, and the majority of the expenses of our Home First residences, which are 3 group homes, as well as our Age in Place programs. We have grants from foundations, and I would say that that's about 11% of our budgeted income, the DACL grants. are about 47% of our budgeted income. We also have corporate sponsorships, individual donations, and then we have our signature annual fundraiser, and then smaller fundraising events throughout the year. Lastly, we have program fees, and those are from programs such as our Home First Residences rental payments, our transportation program, and our care management earned revenue. And the program fees are about 28% of our budgeted income. Our biggest budget items between sites and programs, first and foremost, salaries and fringe benefits. That's our largest expense. After that, it would be other direct services such as contractors and supplies from activities and special events, as well as expenses dealing with IT training and human resources. And then also occupancy, because we have programs around the area. And so we have to pay for rent as well as commercial insurance.
Great. Thanks so much for that breakdown, Don. And I wanted to ask that first because I know many nonprofits will see similar kind of breakdowns in funding sources. I love that you have corporate, individual, government, endowment as well. And so I just wanted to give people a clear picture of what you're working with here as we move through the video. Okay, so moving on. One thing you did, and this came out in the process, one thing you've done since moving into the executive director position, and I should highlight too that Don has been with our organization for many, many years, and has moved into the executive position a few years ago. So one of the things you've done is to create a fully formed finance department. So can you tell us about how Seabury's finances were managed prior to that? If there was a moment or maybe moments where you realized things had to be handled differently, and then kind of what did you prioritize as you started the formation of the department?
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, because I tell you, forming that department has just changed everything for us. So prior to December 2022, we outsourced the finance and accounting functions with two CPA firms to provide the accounting, payroll, and audit services. And then we contracted with an investment firm that managed our endowment and our largest trust. Department of Aging and Community Living's grant financial requirements and responsibilities were really becoming increasingly more than the staff could properly manage. And so consequently, in 2017, we hired a finance and grants manager. And this position reviewed the monthly reimbursement grant invoices, which are complex, by the way, before they were submitted. This position also created the organizational and grant budgets with oversight from the CEO and me. I was the COO at the time. We also hired this position to track our cash positions as well as prepare for our annual audits. And as the CEO, and then in the beginning as the COO, and then in the beginning as the CEO, I was heavily involved in creating and presenting budgets to board for their approval, reviewing and presenting financial statements, reviewing and monitoring bank and credit card accounts, reviewing the revised DACL grant budgets, because there always has to be a revision throughout the fiscal year. And then completing other DACL financial projects, because they also have to monitor how we're spending the funding. And then working with the auditors, which I'm sure many nonprofit leaders know that that's a task in itself. When I became the CEO, and then I promoted one of my colleagues to COO, she was also overseeing the advancement team and fundraising activities, which is a large arm of Seabury and helps us with our operations. It really became clear that we needed a position that would be strictly responsible for our fiscal management. So we said, okay, how are we going to afford this? And so we had to review our administration budget. We adjusted several line items, and then we were able to afford a director of finance in 2022. This position, which transitioned to a managing director of finance, has significantly transformed our financial management and structure, as well as cash flow monitoring and earning income from cash that we didn't immediately need. She, the managing director of finance, introduced us to the employee retention credit program, which I was not aware of. That greatly assisted us with increased cash. And that hire became the beginnings of our finance department because we had the managing director of finance, and then the finance and grants manager became her direct report. So after about a year, she determined we really need to add a senior accountant. And that would mean that the department could assume all of our accounting activities, payroll, monitoring monthly investment activities, preparing financial statements, preparing for the audit, and conducting 990 reviews. And because of that change, the finance department, the managing director of finance, the finance and grants manager, as well as a senior accountant, we are really operating more efficiently, and which was a great benefit, that it is more cost effective for Seabury to have in-house staff to complete the work. Obviously, we have independent auditors to do that, and we have several organizations, two of our housing communities as well as Seabury, to help us with that. But that change has just made a big difference with my position. It has allowed me to focus more time on cultivation and fundraising, which is very important for a nonprofit. And then for our COO to focus on enhancing our operations, workplace culture, as well as HR coverage.
Awesome. Thanks so much for breaking that down for us, Dawn. And I do want to mention, of course, that the idea of back office finances is incredibly normal. The center itself also really supports our members through that process. We even have a group buying partner to do that as well. But yeah, I think that you hit a certain point in the age or size of an organization where it just makes more sense to kind of bring it in-house. So Dawn, thank you for walking us through that process. So I know we've been talking kind of generally about financial administration and the creation of, really solid financial practices, but I kind of want to dive deeper on one aspect of Seabury's finances, which is your investments. And I think a lot of nonprofits, especially, when they're smaller or newer, toy around with the idea of investments and an endowment, but it might be kind of like, pie in the sky, like, wouldn't that be nice if we had the extra money funding to do that? But of course, Seabury has been able to do it. So I'm wondering if you can talk us through kind of the creation of this endowment and the investment policy and the administration of it too, as you move forward.
Of course. So I have to say that Seabury was blessed with forward-thinking board of governors as well as Women Guild volunteers many decades ago that held fundraisers and created an endowment. Our board of governors has consistently been extraordinary stewards of these funds and strategically guided our investment managers throughout the years. The board's finance committee created the investment objectives and policies that were approved by the full board. And that committee is responsible for directing and monitoring the investment management of our portfolios. So the investment managers may suggest modifications as they deem appropriate. That's why we hired them to do that. Of course, to the objectives set forth in the investment policy. But any modification of those objectives must be approved by the finance committee. So generally, the portfolio's assets are considered long-term in nature and include, but are not limited to, endowed or otherwise restricted gifts, board designated funds, as well as all unrestricted funds. What's really nice is that the investment managers present to the finance committee, to me, the COO, and the managing director of finance twice a year. This gives all of us a chance to evaluate their performance, to ensure the preservation of capital, to provide liquidity for predictable outcomes, and ensure adherence to the investment policies. The managing director of finance and CEO review these monthly statements so that we are constantly on top of that performance. There was a change, though, recently. Our board decided to bid out this service. And instead of having just one investment management, we now have three. And I thought, okay, this sounds great. We have some new eyes in terms of investment. This is going to be a little bit more to handle, we thought, but it's been a beautiful process. And it really has provided a diversification of funds. And the objectives of these accounts are to maximize the returns without exposure to undue risk. Seabury also has reserve funds for the housing committees. We just created a food trust for Friendship Terrace Retirement Community, and that was through the recent refinancing. And then we also have treasury bills as investments. Now, withdrawals from the investment funds, mainly the endowment funds, are initiated by the managing director of finance, but approved by me. So all investment managers know we can't just have one person to request this transfer of funds. It also has to be approved by my position. The amount of the withdrawals follows our investment policies, obviously established by the board, as well as the board approved budget. If we have to transfer any additional funds, those have to go through the finance committee for approval. What I really like about the board, and they established this rule many years ago, is that there's a 4% rule. We can only withdraw 4% of the endowment's value annually based on an average balance of the last 3 years. So that really keeps us current, not just thinking of the totality or the balance of the entire endowment, but what has it performed recently. However, in 2020, the board approved a 5-year plan at the request of my predecessor to withdraw an additional amount to produce an enhanced staffing structure to properly support administrative activities, because we were continuing to pursue new grants. And this funding created the director of finance, the director of advancement, and just recently we promoted someone to the director of programs, all of which became managing directors, which is a whole nother conversation regarding staffing structure. But this allowed us to also increase salaries to be more competitive. We have long-term employees, and we want to continue that. We have lots of great expertise, but you also have to be competitive. And so that additional funding for those 5 years, which just recently ended last fiscal year, really helped us to create a great support for our staffing structure. Now, I have to say, there are things that having a managing director of finance and savvy board members have allowed us to do. For example, we've started using a sweep account, and this sweep account transfers excess money in a low yield account to higher yield investments every day. And it really is a simple tool that is creating real revenue over time that we are able to add into our budget. This account is linked to our operating checking account and provides additional interest to the checking account based on the nightly balance. So it's a liquid account, and the funds are available immediately for withdrawal. And this is very important when you have reimbursable grants. You have to put the money out first, and then you are reimbursed. I have to say that the district government has been very good at reimbursing us at a great rate. But still, you don't know if that's always going to happen. And certainly in the beginning of the fiscal year, that is sort of slow. And so you want to make sure that you have that cash on hand. We've also made some investments in our affordable housing development that will yield growth. And for the first time this fiscal year, we have a new asset management fee that will be initiated. And another thing that the board really aligned with me on is ensuring that it's a priority that every program be sustainable within 3 years to really set us on a path of financial stewardship that will keep our endowment healthy for many years to come. But we've also set ambitious fundraising and programmatic goals. So that has been a balance as well.
Got it. Thanks, Don. As you were talking, I was trying to think through a list of like highlights from your answer that I wanted to have us, dwell upon after you were done. And I'm just going to say that I think every single aspect of that was incredibly useful. So maybe what I'll tell viewers is just rewind and listen to that a second time. But I will also, one thing I do want to really pull out from it is you talked a lot about board involvement. And I think that's really important for people to think about more is the executive director, CEO, and the finance team inside the organization are really important, but the board's kind of oversight is duly as important. So thank you for highlighting that. And yeah, I think just providing so much clear information on how the investment process works and the withdrawals to such an important aspect of it. So we're moving
And
into,
Sean, may I just say, you
yeah,
are right that the board is paramount. We have investment bankers, we have attorneys, we have people who have been in the finance field for a long time, CPAs. Those are the people that are on not only our board, but on the finance committee. And that has happened throughout the years. We've just been blessed to have that type of expertise on hand. So that combination that you mentioned, the board, their knowledge of the finance world, as well as the executive team and the managing director of finance, has really created a great equation.
awesome, awesome. Thanks for that, Don. So we're moving to our final question, which, you've heard a little bit from Dawn about her kind of progression over the years at Seabury. She's CEO now, but she was COO, and before that, she'd been with the organization for a long time and in a different variety of roles. So I'm wondering if you can kind of think back to when you potentially were in a position that wasn't quite so financially focused. And I think this is kind of, I'd love to hear your advice on or for other people who don't necessarily have that financial expertise or haven't been in a financially focused role before. Do you have any advice for anyone who's taking on a new role that does have more of a role in the organization or even just their programs kind of budgeting or finances?
So glad you asked this because it can be daunting. And when an opportunity is presented to you, but you know that in a particular area, you may not have that experience, I would say still say yes. And that's why I've been with Seabury for so long, that people have seen things in me that I didn't see. But I said yes at every opportunity, and I'm just so glad that I did. But I will say this, as I and my team prepared our submission for the Excel Award, it really was an excellent opportunity to reflect on my CEO journey over the last few years. And my number one piece of advice is to surround yourself with a great team and to listen to their advice. I mentioned our board and their makeup, and we have a matrix to ensure that across the board we have expertise in various areas. But also, our COO and our managing director of finance have MBAs. I am not a financial expert, but I did jump right in and participate in our internal budget creation project process. I learned from the investment presentations because I attended the finance committee meetings. I read many financial and investment statements, and I was really grateful to the board treasurers who were generous with their time. We pursued people for our board of directors that could support us in that area, as I mentioned, and built a plan to increase our capacity for financial accounting. So, in the long run, that saved us money. And instead of using the outside agency to perform the financial assignments, as I mentioned, we hired the director of finance that became the managing director. And she was really a great team member that invested in our financial success and had the familiar relationship with the board to implement the new revenue generating ideas, excuse me, like utilizing the sweep account. That's the account that I mentioned before. Also, I would suggest that there are lots of financial webinars, peer support groups, um, professional development opportunities out there for people to use, including, I have to give you a shout out, your March webinar on practical guidelines for revenue recognition that the Center for Nonprofit is offering. And lastly, I will just say, as executive leaders, we don't have to be experts in everything, although you feel like you have to, but we have to know where to go to get that expertise and bring that capacity to our organizations. So When we are successful, we are coalition builders in pursuit of our mission. And where I have been the most successful, it is when I have helped the right people come together to make those decisions, implement a strategy, and then follow through that plan together.
Awesome, awesome. So what I'm hearing is say yes to everything, learn as much as possible, and then surround yourself with people who can help you. And maybe another point is don't be afraid to not be the expert in the room
That's
and
right.
be willing to learn and take in other people's advice. Great. Well, Don, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. I will say too, congratulations again on being the winner of this year's Excel Award. We were so excited to learn more about you and from you throughout the process. Everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in. Just a reminder too that this is just one of 3 videos we are making this year, so please keep an eye out for the other 2. But yeah, Don, thanks so much for your time, and everyone else, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.